Okay, so now I'll open a public hearing on House Bill 3110. So Melissa, if you describe this bill.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, House Bill 3110 creates the Oregon Rural Service Center within the Oregon Business Development Department to assist rural counties, cities, and special districts to learn about, apply for, and manage grants and other funding opportunities to support community workforce and economic development.
Okay. And Representative Bonham, did we run former Representative Huffman off, or?
Yeah, he's the one that's supposed to be kicking off our presentation here, Chair Lively, so hopefully he's standing right outside the door.
Hopefully, that's right.
I can get us started, it's fine.
Okay.
So just a little brief history on
So for the record,
for the record,
sorry.
yes, thank you. Oh, yes, indeed. My name is Daniel Bonham from House District 59. It's the western half of Wasco, Jefferson, Wheeler, northern Deschutes County, and it includes all the lands of the Confederated Tribes of Warm Springs. And with me here today, distinguished guest, Honorable former Representative John Huffman, whose shoes are still too big to fill, but we try on a daily basis. So, John, would you like to kick us off?
I would, sir.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Chair Lively, committee, it's great to see you. Good to be with you. I'm John Huffman. I am the agency director for USDA Rural Development for the state of Oregon. And I am here to basically present what the need is that I identified early on in my job. I've been there about a year and a half now. And the first several months, I went out into the very rural parts of Oregon and met with a lot of small volunteer special district, fire district, water district, small community mayors, where everybody's volunteer in the communities would, if they were lucky, have a half-time recorder, and often not at all. And so I would be meeting with them, and they'd say, we would absolutely love to access some of the money that rural development has, and I probably don't have as much money as Senator Johnson likes to say several times in public meetings where I'm the guy with the checkbook and have more money than God. That's not true. But in the last 2 years in Oregon alone, between grants, loan guarantees for rural businesses and whatnot, we've done a little over $1.1 billion, and that's pretty normal for us. $600+ million per year. It's in rent subsidy. Again, a lot of loan guarantees for energy projects, rural businesses, housing, single-family home guarantees, direct loans where banks are not willing because of a credit score to loan to a family. That's where rural development, single-family housing comes in. So we have almost 50 different programs that we administer in Oregon. And so it's a combination of all that comes up with the 1.2 billion for the biennia. But I get out and I talk to a lot of people, and they say, we'd like to access your programs, but we don't have the capacity. And so I said, after a few times, I started catching on because I'm smart that way. And I said, what do you mean by capacity? I'm not really following. I mean, we do have rules around our grant programs and our low-interest loans and stuff, but you're not able to access them. Why? If it's not the rules. And they said, well, we don't have full-time people. We don't have anybody that can write a grant for us. We don't have full-time staff that can write a grant that's going to be successful. And a lot of our grants are for Oregon only, but a lot of them are also nationally competitive. And so you've got to have somebody that's proficient at grant writing to be able to get in there and compete for $1 million broadband grant or whatever that might be. And we've just found that in these very small rural and frontier areas, they don't have the they might have the retired talent. I don't want to say they don't have the talent. They don't have the talent that has the time or the willingness or whatever, and because oftentimes people do that for money. And so that's kind of setting the stage for what the need is out there. And as I started hearing about the capacity need, I went back and I talked to Greg Wolf at Association of Oregon Counties, Tracy Rutten at League of Oregon Cities, Mark Landauer at Special Districts, Lori Sattenspiel at School Boards, because I dealt with it as a legislator. We had small rural districts that wanted to apply for the CTE grant. We as the legislature felt really good that we had really built up this CTE fund, but come to find out, it was a competitive grant situation, or at least it was a couple of years ago. And if you didn't have a Brian Krieg in there reminding the rest of the board that was reviewing the grant applications that, wait, you can't just look at how slick this grant application is, because you have to weight it with the fact that it's from a very, very small school district, and the part-time coach probably put the grant together to get it into the Department of Education. So there are lots of needs out there, and as I talked to AOC, LOC, special districts, and school boards, they said, oh yeah, you've identified a long-time problem that we've had and never figured out how to deal with it. And so that's kind of what was the basis for going to Rep. Bonham's Legislative Rural Policy Work Group and saying, what can be done? As a federal employee, I can't sit here and advocate for House Bill 3110. All I can do is present the need out there, and it's a very real need. Can these small rural Paisleys, Jordan Valleys, whatever, could they find USDA Rural Development and access us? In the technical sense, yes, they could. But if you don't know who to go to, I was in Tye Valley several months ago with Business Oregon for an infrastructure meeting, and the volunteer person for the rural fire district, and at the time, one of my sons was the emergency operations director for Wasco County, and so I knew that Wasco County had some funds that they could give this rural fire district for education about the buffer between home and forest, the defensible area. I knew that there was money for them there, but she was asking us in that meeting, do you know of any money? I want to send out a postcard. I want to send out a flyer, try to educate our patrons about this defensible space and get them more educated. And I didn't want to speak up and throw my son under the bus, but I said, well, there is money available, yes. But a lot of times these volunteers, they're retired. They don't have the time or the knowledge or the ability to find out where to go, much less actually make an application. And so the guts of the concept are going to follow me in testimony and explain what 3110 does, why it would work, I guess the purpose of the advisory board that comes with it, and why Business Oregon was selected as the fiduciary. It's had a lot of stakeholder involvement from anybody and everybody that was invited to come and participate and speak to it. It's excited a lot of people because of the monies that can be accessed with the right capacity, the right assistance through economic development districts. I think we could have a lot more $15,000 grants that partially pay for the Grange roof for Waltersville. We can have a lot more of the Almsville grants that pay for the police cars, the rural ambulance districts and fire districts that this last year we've given $65,000 here and $50,000 there. We do have some successes, but we could have so many more if these folks just had the ability to get to us and access our funds. So I will shut up there. I'm happy to come back up later for questions if you want, but I think we've tried to make sure that a lot of the questions will be answered in testimony.
Former Representative Huffman, I just thought maybe if a listener that if you drove faster, you could be in more places that, no, sorry.
And Mr. Chair, it's interesting. My staff has shrunk since I've been there. I haven't run anybody off, but we're down about 9 people in the last year and a half. But aside from that, it's more of an ethical situation where we can't fill out the application for people. They have to do it on their own because even if it's in-state, they're competitive in-state, and we've only got so many millions of dollars to dole out. So it wouldn't be fair for us to do applications for some and not others. So it's a conundrum.
Very good.
I couldn't get through this without saying conundrum. I'm so proud of myself.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you, Chair Lively. Just a brief history of how we even got to the legislative policy group. So, it was a year and a half ago. I sat at home. I read an article that Representative Huffman was taking a new job, and I decided I was going to throw my hat in the ring. And so I reached out to John and said, hey, can we visit about your experience and what you were doing and how you were successful, or where you found you might have invested more time to go back and do it over again. And he pointed to 3 work groups that he was a part of, one on privacy, one on trafficking, and another on the drones. And he said, we got a lot of work done. We were bipartisan. We really vetted these things. By the time it came out of our work group, we knew we had a good product to go showcase to the other folks. And so I asked the question. I said, so if you were to do it over again, would those still be the 3 things you would focus on? And we started to talk about this rural concept, that there are different needs on our side of the state than there are in the Willamette Valley. And so we did it. With the help of my staff, put together a rural policy work group, and we had a very diverse set of stakeholders that came to the table. And the nice thing for me, it was kind of a confluence of learning from John, but also some historic lessons I had learned at Evergreen Airlines, where I worked for Del Smith, who was the founder and chairman of the company. And he used to always say that no one is smarter than everyone. And I just absolutely loved that. And as we got together with this group and we started to hear from the different players around the room, as John articulated, there's absolute need out there for these small communities that just don't have the access that a lot of us who live in more urban centers have. And so we started this. It's been a long journey, to be honest, to get here. We're on probably our 8th iteration of how we thought we would get to a solution that we could present. And it does come with a financial ask. And at the same time, what we saw, particularly in an example from the state of Hawaii, is that they experienced a 10-to-1 return on their investment. We're targeting hopefully a 3-to-1 return to be more conservative, if I can use that word, hoping that we can deploy this and get the returns. But again, it's been a diverse group coming together to try and deploy this concept. And honestly, the folks that will speak after me know a lot more about the nuance and the intricacies of it, so I will stop talking and let them come forward. But I appreciate you guys considering this concept, and I think it would be an important step for rural Oregon to have access to these funds.
Okay. Any
Mr. Chair, one more example. Some people in the building might know that I had a measure of success in Ways and Means and capital construction, taking some money for really good projects back to Eastern Oregon. And after I got to rural development, and this is part of my interest in this bill too, I realized that the $500,000 that I got for the Mosier Fire Hall and the $725,000, I think it was, for the Spray Fire Hall, and a number of different projects that I'd gotten legislative funding for. Some of it was general fund and some of it was lottery bonding. It was a combination of both. But I figured out that had I known and had the rural fire district known, they could have applied through USDA Rural Development, because we do that. We grant and loan money for rural fire halls. And so that was what really increased my passion for it. I thought, I thought, well, maybe Speaker Kotek might be interested in the ability for rural legislators to be able to really do more for their districts without waiting to the capital construction subcommittee meeting and presenting this list that is so oversubscribed anyway that it's really tough. So to do one big thing for rural Oregon maybe this could be it.
Very good. Any questions for Representative Barretto?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this may come up later, John, but when you hire a grant writer, do you hire them by the job, by the hour? How do they view a grant and what it costs to have that written up?
Chair Lively, Rep. Barretto, that is flexible within the bill for economic development districts. If they want to hire an additional grant writer or two, they can do that. If they want to contract with a quality grant writing service to do the project, they can do that. It's up to them on how they use the money, but the oversight and accountability is very specific in the bill about what they have to do to meet the needs if they've got multiple small communities or entities approaching them for help.
Okay.
Representative Drazen?
Thank you, Chair. And it's possible that there's another panel coming after you guys that might be able to answer this question. But I was curious about the placement within Business Oregon, and it seems to me that they're primarily focused on traded sector. This just looks like it's kind of an expansion of their mission and kind of just a slightly outside what they typically do. So I was just curious about that as a choice for housing this effort.
Chair Lively, Representative Drazen, their role will be purely fiduciary. The role really will be
Fiscal agent for them?
fiscal agent for the economic development districts, yeah.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
Rep. Drazen, probably one of our biggest state partners, state agency partners for USDA rural development is Business Oregon. We do a tremendous amount of work out there from business support, business loans, infrastructure, the infrastructure finance, the one-stop centers for where my program director meets with Business Oregon folks for water and wastewater systems for rural communities. So they really are engaged at a pretty strong level in rural business.
Okay, any further questions? Doesn't look like it. Thank you
Thanks so
both for
much.
being here. You bet. So next I'm going to call up Mark Landauer and Mary MacArthur. If you just introduce yourself